I don't know why. Anyway, let's get reading. Yeah, so we're gonna start on page 141 of the PDF, which is 139 on the actual page number, okay? And I have to keep remembering that I don't have tea to drink. I'm so disappointed. It's a shame. It's a shame. Okay. Here we go. It feels so wrong. It feels so wrong to do this without tea. I've been doing this for years. Alright. Expressing what you feel. If we can honestly express our thoughts and feelings, other people may find it much easier to empathize with us. This may help them see beyond any assumptions about us and our behavior in the conflict. It also paves the way for a discussion of their needs as well as ours. Sorry. Showing and talking about feelings. Your preferred way of bringing something up will depend a lot on your own culture and habits. You might also want to think about why or who you are talking to and what they are able to hear. Some people find it much easier to connect to and understanding the emotion if you show it to them instead of just talking about it. If you shout at them or burst into tears, it will help them recognize something is important to you. Iced tea. Oh god. That wouldn't work for me now. Other people may be uncomfortable around displays of anger or distress, possibly seeing it as manipulative, and find it much easier to hear what you are saying when you are more calm. You might not feel you have much choice about how you express yourself, or you might not want to adapt it to suit other people. For example, in Northern Europe, the stereotypes are for middle-class cultures to avoid showing anger, and masculine cultures to hide vulnerability. You might well argue that these cultures are dominant enough, and there's no reason for you to fit their norms simply in order to be taken seriously. Yeah? However, communication can be more effective if you are aware of the preferences of the person or people on the receiving end as well as your own. If you feel you aren't getting through to some people with your feelings on display, then a pragmatic decision might be to explain yourself a second time after you've calmed down. Naming your feelings without blaming anyone. Being honest about what you feel shows self-respect. You aren't pretending your feelings are something else in order to be taken seriously. It can also help other people to empathize with you and to be honest in their turn. It can help to talk about feelings in a way that doesn't imply they are anyone's fault, our own or someone else's. This is a bit counterintuitive if you have been brought up in a culture where blame is very normal, so here is a detailed explanation. Returning to the housing co-op example, consider Fahim's anger with Katie's music. The anger certainly isn't his fault. He wants to relax, and the music is preventing him. Feelings like irritation, anger, or disappointment shouldn't be suppressed. Nor does it help anyone if we turn those feelings inward, deciding we are a bad person for feeling angry, pathetic for feeling hurt, etc. However, Katie didn't make him feel angry any more than the sea can make you drown. His anger comes from the fact that his needs aren't being met. Some of the other housemates particularly need silence, and they aren't bothered by the music. Or none of the other housemates, sorry. People usually do things to meet their own needs, and very rarely have the intention that we should respond in a particular way. The main point here is that even when you have strong feelings, the answer isn't necessarily that the other person should change the behavior that triggered those feelings. It might mean you making changes yourself, or accepting that their behavior doesn't mean what you think it does. For example, maybe you get upset if someone ignores you when they are working. Maybe you could let them finish their work first, asshole. You might want to demand that they pay you more attention, or simply write them off as cold or rude. However, part of the answer may simply be for you to recognize that this is about their need to concentrate, not about them not liking you. Yeah? God. This doesn't mean they shouldn't consider your feelings. For example, if they know that you find it hard to be in the same group as someone who doesn't acknowledge you for long periods of time, they could learn to give you a nice smile before asking you to let them finish. Nor do you have to give up what you really need. For as long as you want to go on sharing something, a house or a relationship or a group, you all have a responsibility to find ways of meeting your needs that don't get in the way of anyone else's. Giving other people information about how you feel is the first step in a collaborative process which takes into account everyone's feelings. I statements. A formula for expressing feelings without blame is known as the I statement. When you plus behavior, parentheses, plus behavior, I don't, comma, I, dot, dot, dot. For example, when you play your music so loud, I can't sleep. When the meeting starts late, I get frustrated. When we make a plan and then you don't turn up, I stop wanting to make any more plans with you. In this way, you can name the two things, the other person's behavior and your response, without implying that the one is the direct and only cause of the other, as in, you make me angry, or I'm angry because you, dot, dot, dot. Keeping your account of the behavior as fact-based as possible can help pinpoint exactly what bothers you. For example, you often leave your things in the living room may be more helpful than you're lazy and messy. Using the I statement formula may have the added benefit of the other people becoming less defensive. However, if you express yourself in this way simply in order to get a better response from them, they may feel detected and feel manipulated. As always, honesty is key. For example, be aware of whether what you say about your own feelings is an indirect comment on the other person's or people's behavior. You might say, I feel exploited, /ignored, /betrayed, /let down, but in fact these words are not so much about how you feel as how you interpret someone else's behavior. These interpretations may be an important part of why you feel what you do, and you might have a good reason to want to present them to other people. However, if you want to stick to the I statement formula, then I feel overworked, lonely, disappointed, or frustrated talks purely about what is going on for you. A test is whether someone could deny what you said. For example, if someone says, I feel frozen out of the group, it is easy to respond with, we're not freezing you out, whereas I feel alone in this group is much harder to glibly contradict. This can reduce the potential for the other person to respond defensively. On the other hand, you might find this dishonest. For example, you could translate I feel betrayed to I feel disappointed, but it wouldn't really do justice to how complex your feelings are. Plus, explaining how you interpret someone's behavior could help them understand why you feel so strongly about it. I always do the cleaning, and I feel angry about it because I think you are exploiting me. You might need to get this interpretation off your chest in order to listen to their view on the matter. I don't see it as exploitation, I just don't think it's necessary to hoover the carpet every day. Depending on where you are. Why the fuck are you vacuuming every day? Like, what? How about... Chill, holy shit. Like, oh my gosh, there are some places where you would need it to be that clean. Not sure why most houses would need that. Every day? Okay. This doesn't mean you have to agree, simply recognize their different perspective. There's no single right answer as to whether it is helpful to let other people know how you judge their behavior, but it does help to be aware that it can produce a strong reaction. Use phrases like, I think, ... my interpretation of this or that is ... in my head that means ... to acknowledge that they might see it differently. I mean, like, there's dog hair to be vacuumed in this house, that's true. But, like, every day? Feels like it could be a bit much depending on how much she's shedding. if there are other people coming over, I vacuum my room and shit like that, you know, like I just, like if someone has to come in my room for something, I'll clean it. I don't actually let the dog in here, so that's not even a problem. The hair on the floor is all mine, and there's a lot of it. I have long hair, that's how it is, you know? Oh my god. Sorry, I am. Oh my god. Oh god. Okay. Where to go from here? If you've spent a long time preparing what you want to say, it is easy to forget that collaboration also involves drawing out the other person's perspective, pardon me, which is harder to plan for. Broadly speaking, the aim is to come to an understanding of each other's needs and perspectives on the situation as it stands, and work from there to find new ways forward. This can be easier if you accept from the outset that the other person will have a different memory and interpretation of whatever has happened in the past. For example, a protracted back and forth about whether someone really said the words you found so hurtful might undermine goodwill and not take you forward. If you can tell someone, what I remember you saying is, and what I believe you meant by it was, they might be able to accept your feelings, even if they still insist that what they intended to say was something different. If you have led the way with honesty and feel like they are covering up what they really think and feel, or are refusing to accept your thoughts and feelings, you may well feel angry with them. However, be aware that defensiveness is often a stage that people pass through. You can tell them you don't think they are really listening to you, and ask them to meet you again when you have had a bit of time to think. These kinds of delays may be frustrating, but they can be a better option than wrangling over details. You've had time to consider things. They probably need it too. And also watch out for someone who goes to the opposite extreme and seems to agree with and accept everything you have said about their behavior. They may have decided that being accommodating to your version of events is the easiest way to avoid having to really talk about it. Or they too may need to process what you have said in order to discover their own point of view. Before attempting a constructive dialogue about what to do next. Ugh. Brain not working. However careful you were to express your feelings without blame, they may still believe that it is there and blame themselves too. Get yourselves ready to listen even if you don't like what you hear. Be aware that if you have spent your time rehearsing I statements, what you get back from other people may come in less carefully chosen words. For example, if they say, "You make me feel inadequate," remember that this is a very common turn of phrase, and it doesn't necessarily indicate that they think the feeling is your fault. Rather than becoming defensive yourself or insisting they express themselves in the way you consider to be correct before you will listen, try to pick out the information that will help you move forwards, their feelings and the behaviors of yours that trigger it. I am so hungry right now. Unrelated, but try to show an interest in their perspective without losing sight of your own. For example, maybe you work with someone who consistently arrives late in the mornings. You can show understanding for why they find it hard to get their kids ready and arrive in work at the agreed time, but still insist that you want their help with the early morning jobs. Or perhaps someone tells you that they find you cold and distant. It's fine to tell them that you haven't been very outgoing recently because you are suffering from depression. However, it helps if you can also accept that they perceive you in a particular way, regardless of whether you think this perception is fair. Remember as well that in order to get everything you really need, you may well have to give up some of the things that you want. If the issue is arriving late to work, then perhaps your colleague really can't come in on time. In this case, you need to think about whether you really need everyone there first thing in the morning, in which case the only solution might be to find someone else to join your workers' co-op. Alternative Alternatively, maybe what you need is to feel the work is distributed fairly. Ugh. And if they take on all the jobs at the end of the day, so you can leave early, it might be okay. Beware also that none of these options are likely to feel as comfortable to them as carrying on as things are. So don't be surprised if they are reluctant to acknowledge the problem at first. Stick at it. If you cannot carry on working, working there as things are, my brain, then they have a responsibility to find another way around the problem. Whatever solutions you come to, it can help take the pressure off if you think you're just trying them out. You might not be convinced by the idea of your colleague taking on end-of-the-day jobs instead, but you could still try it out for a limited time period, with a commitment to review how it is going after a fixed time. It can make it easier to let go things you want if you know you both have the option of revisiting the decision, and if you are deeply unhappy, you can say so at any point. The final option is to decide whether the incompatibility is so fundamental that you cannot go on sharing whatever it is you share, or whether it is better to reach a compromise, however unsatisfactory, than to split. If you are part of a campaign group that has long-running disagreements about who they should be targeting, there may be a very limited range of actions. Maybe should be 2 words in that case. Brits. Can't even spell their own language right. God. There may space be, thank you, editor, a very limited range of actions you can do together, and you might get more done as 2 groups. By contrast, a residents' association in a block of flats might be able to divide into different working groups so that certain people didn't have to spend too much time together. Couleur, oui, oui, baguette, boulangerie, pamplemousse. C'est pas anglais, c'est français. Ce n'est pas. Why do you say c'est pas? Because je ne parle pas français. That's why. Oh my god. What the fuck did I just say to you? I think I said, like, what did I say? I don't even remember. I just said a bunch of random French words, mostly related to food. And then I said, that the way that Brits, I was saying that the way that Brits spell words is French, not English. We speak English here in America, but over in England they spell it like it's French, so it's French over there. It's not English there. Okay. Anyway, a residents' association in a block of flats might be able to divide into the different working groups. It sounded like drunk redneck Spanish. Ma français? Como español? Oh my god. Oui. Mon français est très long. C'est vrai. Okay. We're gonna try this again. By contrast, a residents' association in a block of flats might be able to divide into different working groups so that certain people didn't have to spend too much time together. But they might undermine each other if God damn it. What does that even mean? Help. Oh boy. Should it be Deutsch time? Should we just give up on English? Einmal in der Woche Kunst und Musik, zweimal in der Woche Geschichte und Deutsch, dreimal in der Woche Mathe, Englisch, aber einmal, zweimal, dreimal, viermal, fünfmal, sechsmal und siebenmal in der Woche zu viele Hausaufgaben. What? Oh my god. I did eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That's it. I'm gonna eat like a whole ass pizza after this, cause yeah, that's not enough food. But that's what I've eaten so far today. I have to ration my water. We're only half an hour into the stream and I'm like almost halfway done with my water. God damn it. This is so cursed. I need my tea, but if I turn on the kettle, it's gonna like it's gonna trip the goddamn breaker again, isn't it? French. How is that? You know, French is just disgusting. Oh my god. Just like... We're gonna try this sentence for about the 5th time. By contrast, a residence association and a block of flats might be able to divide into different working groups so that certain people didn't have to spend too much time together, but they might undermine each other if they split entirely and started putting opposing demands to the landlord, or one group started buying laying tarmac where the other was planning to dig flower beds. Even in situations where you opt for a split, the attempt to collaborate for a good solution can help everyone feel they have had a fair deal in the division and enable you to work together on specific things in the future. Power dynamics. Sadly, we can't get from today's unjust society to one where everyone is equal simply by saying that is where we want to be. You're right, we can't just say it. We all have to collectively think hard enough about it in order to magically manifest it into reality. No? The reality is that in any group, even one which uses consensus and is committed to non-hierarchy, some people will be feeling more empowered and comfortable than others. Who this is might vary from situation to situation, but particularly when it is the same people a lot of the time, these characters can end up dominating the group. The reason for this might be that they've been heavily involved for a long time, or that they have grown up with privileges that mean they are more used to the idea that their needs are valid and their ways of doing things are okay. The problem here is not the fact that they feel empowered and comfortable. If everyone felt their needs were valid and their way of doing things was okay, and the power to do things in the group was shared between everybody, it would be great. The difficulty arises when there are big imbalances between members of the group, or some people use their power against others. For example, someone who is very involved might see themselves as indispensable and insist that meeting times are always fitted around their personal timetable, even if that means that there are other people who can never make it. ATS, I have a question. Have you ever played Disco Elysium? Or it might simply always be the same people who express their views and feelings when an issue is discussed, meaning that ultimately the decisions go their way. If this is the case, then a group is not really using consensus, because it will not be finding solutions which work for the people who are less able to express their views. Step 1. What are our feelings about power dynamics? Realizing our group is not as non-hierarchical as it claims to be can be dispiriting, and can stir up feelings of guilt, shame, and anger. I see. The thinking about something hard enough until it manifests in reality thing was a reference to one scene in Disco Elysium. Let's just say you can meet up with a communist reading group in the game. Okay. and they believe some interesting things. I like that scene a lot, though. It's really funny. Oh, wait, okay. People can respond to... Wait, where did I don't know. This... But I'm just gonna restart the paragraph. My brain isn't working today, okay? Realizing our group is not as non-hierarchical as it claims to be can be dispiriting and can stir up feelings of guilt, shame, and anger. This can particularly be the case when the root of the problem is in social inequalities that impact on the whole of people's lives, not just their interactions in this particular group. People can respond to guilt, shame, and anger in a number of ways. These feelings can provide the impetus for change. Alternatively, people can be paralyzed by these feelings to the extent that they don't feel able to look honestly at their behavior and work out how to change it so that they take more or less power in a situation. I feel like my reading cadence is way off today. Like, I feel it's difficult. If I try to go faster, I'm going to fail harder than usual. I feel like... Oh my god. Fuck. I'm exhausted, y'all. An approach that some people find helpful to avoid paralysis is to recognize that these feelings are valid, but also to recognize that the behaviors that trigger those feelings are part of a system of oppression and exploitation that has a much longer history than their particular group and the individuals within it. This approach acknowledges that we all have responsibility to learn to behave in ways that are more equal, and therefore it's understandable to feel angry or guilty if we or someone else is not doing that. At the same time, it accepts that this learning process takes time for everyone, and if we haven't got to where we want to be yet, it doesn't make us bad people. For example, imagine someone in your group makes a casually snobby comment.
Oh, you've never seen Neon Genesis Evangelion before? Why are you even here?
What do they mean by casually snobby? That's one type of snobby. One type. But like...
Oh yeah. I'm going to see the Arboreal Centipede Troupe tonight. They're my favorite band. You've probably never heard of them.
Anyway. Like mocking the Brits or the French language? That's not snobby at all. That's the opposite. They're the snobby ones. God. Oh, fuck it. I bet none of y'all have ever listened to Arboreal Centipede Troupe before. Alright. They may be a product of the class system, and they're certainly perpetuating it, but they didn't technically create the whole structure of social and economic exploitation. On the other hand, it is understandable if sometimes they get the full brunt of your rage, as if they did. After all, consensus decision-making is all about human equality, and it can be very disappointing when people don't live out the politics they believe in. Plus, it is very common to internalize oppression, to believe emotionally, if not rationally, that there's something wrong with you if you haven't gotten a fair deal out of life. Discovering anger at the outside world can be an important stage in undoing that internalized oppression, and it is not surprising if that anger is sometimes directed disproportionately at the people around you. However, remember that the behavior that triggered your anger, resentment, or shame may well come from the other person's insecurity, or at least their lack of awareness, and is unlikely to be about them being deliberately malicious. For example, maybe you feel intimidated by someone who takes up a lot of space talking in large meetings, but perhaps they do it to make up for their own feelings of inadequacy or for in more informal social situations. Similarly, if someone directs that kind of anger at you, or even gently challenges you on something you have said or done, remembering the wider perspective can help you put guilt and defensiveness on one side. If you're a white person and someone calls you racist, for example, a common response might be to feel like a terrible person and shut down, or to deny it altogether. Wait, hold on. I have a meme for that. Well, I have a somewhat related meme. Okay. Somewhat related. Similar. But yeah, the like someone tells you that something you said was racist, and like you immediately go into like, I don't even know, like super over the top apologetics mode, or whatever, however you want to put it. Anyway, that's, yeah. Anyway. So anyway, a healthier way of dealing with it might be to use what was said to become more aware of the privileges you have benefited from or how your behavior impacts on other people. In other words, just fucking listen to them and shut the fuck up. God. You can do this even if you don't immediately agree with their interpretation of the situation. For example, maybe you and your group have traveled to another city for a demonstration and you got lost at night in a neighborhood that your guidebook— I did not read that word correctly the first time I glanced over it. Holy God. Oh boy. A rough guidebook. Sorry. Your guidebook describes it as rough. Okay. Yeah, that's, Afterwards, someone points out that you chose the only white person in the street to ask directions from. You may think that the reason that you felt safer approaching this person was that they were also the only one you identified as a woman, and believe that this was a more acceptable reason to trust them than the color of their skin. However, it shows more respect to the person who challenged you and greater honesty with yourself if you also seriously consider their suggestion that at a subconscious level, race may have also played a part in your decision. Guidebook. That's a lot like gridlock. Very similar looking words with similar effects on my dyslexic trans woman ass, okay? Along with anger and guilt, another common dynamic is for people to develop a competitive attitude around different forms of privilege. A classic example would be a middle-class woman and a working-class man debating whether patriarchy or the class system is the real problem, as if there wasn't enough oppression to go around, and acknowledging someone else's might cancel out their own share. If you are finding you are feeling resentful when someone complains they have been abused, exploited, or overlooked, it is worth stepping back and thinking about where that feeling comes from. Maybe you have things of your own to complain about and feel these could be given more attention. Sometimes you might want to do this by bringing your own experiences into the conversation. At other times, you can simply acknowledge them to yourself. Either way, this can be done alongside a recognition that other people may have experienced a similar dynamic for different reasons, and there may be situations where you have unfair advantages, as well as others where you are disadvantaged. One final feeling to consider is hope. It is easy to lose motivation if progress is slower than you expected. Challenging these patterns can be more difficult than organizing an event or an action or setting up a new project. It means going against years of our own socialization in a divided and competitive society. It means changing our feelings and beliefs about ourselves and other people. And however much honesty and understanding you achieve, you will still face defensiveness from other people and recognize it occasionally in yourself. Whatever you do to learn and live and work as equals, there will still be times when you don't take the power that is due to you, or you exert power over others. Don't give up. Sorting out your power dynamics is an important part of making consensus decisions real, and whatever steps you take to a more equal and balanced dynamic deserve pride and recognition. Step 2. Diagnosis. What is actually going on in your group? We often have a strong sense for what the power dynamics in a group are, but it can help to also work out what's going on in a more objective way. For example, you might particularly notice the dominant behavior of someone you find socially irritating and overlook it in someone you are friends with. Looking at how important decisions are made in your group may help to assess how balanced your power dynamics are. These decisions may be taken on a day-to-day basis, but they shape the direction of your group over time. Examples of these decisions are: what things should you prioritize doing? How should you use your resources? Questions to ask yourselves. My mouth did not work. Questions to ask yourselves. How are decisions made? Do they go to meetings, or are there key people in your group who decide what needs doing and then just get on with it? If someone has a question about whether to do something, are there particular people who they are more likely to ask and then take their opinion as permission? Or do you make enough clear policy decisions and share enough information in meetings that everyone is equally able to make judgment calls for themselves or work out whether they need to check in with everyone? Hold on. I have to move my microphone. Okay, for example, in a workers' co-op, one person might agree to work that came in without checking what anyone else thought. Got it. While others put it to a meeting. Neither of these options is intrinsically better. Whether it is useful to check with the co-op first will depend on the circumstances. The key question is whether everyone is doing the same. If these decisions are made in meetings, who participates? Is everyone equally involved, or are there some people who don't go or don't get involved in the discussion as much? When people speak, are they all equally likely to be listened to, which isn't the same as agreed with? And when people talk, what are they talking about? There is a word of difference between opening your mouth to say, "Does anyone want a cup of tea?" Or even, "I think the text on the leaflet should be bigger," and having the openness and trust to assert more difficult needs. Like, "I think that action is too risky," or "I really don't want that person to join our band." Anyone want to join my band? We can make a band, y'all. I've got a guitar. Okay. I can sing Wonderwall. I'm kidding. I don't actually know Wonderwall. Is that weird? Am I supposed to know Wonderwall? I feel like that's supposed to be obligatory, but I don't. I don't know Wonderwall at all. And I don't ever want to learn it. I don't want to be that bitch. Okay. And how are decisions implemented? Are there some people who do what they want and ignore or forget what was agreed? When people take on tasks, are there some who don't get any guidance at all from the group, while for others every detail is micromanaged? Oh, fuck. Exactly how people participate in a group will vary over time. People will take on it's better not to learn anything, by the way. People will take on different roles depending on personal things like day-to-day fluctuations and their mental and physical health, as well as the context, like what topic is being discussed or what tasks are taken on. Sometimes the power dynamic will right itself quickly. For example, someone who is quite confident might be briefly intimidated by someone else's expertise, and then realize their own contributions are equally valid, even if they can't express them in the same technical terms. The key, therefore, is to look for repeat patterns across several meetings so you can identify where the more entrenched problems lie. Step 3. Where do your power imbalances come from? Identifying what patterns there are in your group is important, but to change them, it helps to think about where they come from. The answer to this will rarely be simple. For example, Fred and I might not speak very often in meetings, and an immediate reaction for this might be that the group isn't sharing enough information early on in the discussion for him to understand the issues that are being talked about. However, there might be a longer-term problem. If Fred had more confidence and self-trust, he might ask about the things he didn't understand instead of sitting in silence. And if the rest of the group valued him more highly, they might notice he wasn't talking and fill him in on the details he was missing. In this example, people could make the situation a little better by spending more time introducing the issue, as suggested in the consensus process outlined in Chapter 1. However, if there is an underlying power dynamic in which Fred is consistently undervalued both by himself and the rest of the group, sharing information in a meeting is unlikely to go far enough to change things. Who's most involved? In this example, it may be that Fred's silence is linked to the fact that Scooby-Doo won't shut the fuck up, that most of the talking in the meetings is done by a small group of people who are heavily involved. These people may have got into the position of power through commitment to the project, rather than a desire to dominate. They may talk more because they have a greater overview of what needs doing, care more what decisions are made, and are better informed by the options. Other people may defer to them because they always know where things are kept, how things work, and what happened last time an idea was tried out. In this case, steps need to be taken to make it easier for people to get involved in the things the group does, not just to make it easier for them to talk in meetings. The key thing to remember is that we are looking for ways to share power, not simply to take it away from the people who have it. The answer is not to resent and ignore the people who have more experience, but for people who are new to build up their involvement so they gain the knowledge and understanding to take shared responsibility for making good decisions. Who does what? Are there some people who always take on tasks that society considers high status, and other people are very involved but always do jobs that are considered menial? It can often be the case that the people who who do more respected jobs are also treated like more important people. For example, if one person always makes the leaflets and someone else only delivers them, they may not participate as equals in meetings. In some direct action groups, it is common for people to take part in actions to get seen as somehow more important than the people who drive them there, or cook food before they set off, or go along to court to cheer them on. There can be a similar dynamic around jobs that are traditionally gendered. For example, if you live on a protest site, cooking, constructing defenses against eviction, chopping wood, and washing up are all equally necessary jobs and all require learned skills. However, it is not unusual to find that there is a gender divide in who does those jobs, and for the people with the skills that are considered masculine also to be accorded a higher status. Y'all, I'm supporting the patriarchy whenever I cook. Fuck. God damn it. Oh no, y'all. Fuck. God. I'm gonna have to stop cooking now. What the fuck? Y'all, oh my god. I'm doomed. Oh my god. Who feels at home? Another dynamic is around what kind of people feel at home in the group. Consensus provides a radically alternative way to make decisions compared to direct voting, representative democracy, or straightforward hierarchy. Oh, you do? Okay, be right back. Socks acquired, but I forgot to turn off my closet light, god damn it. Alrighty. The camera doesn't go low enough. Knee. Is knee allowed on stream? Or is that too risque? Can't show a knee on stream. Oh my god. Female presenting knees are disallowed. Legit, I actually was getting kind of cold, so. Oh boy. I'm gonna put my flannel on too. We're gonna go full gay mode here. Oh boy. Oh boy. Anyway. Let's see here. Okay. Who feels at home? Another dynamic is around what kind of people. Did we already say all this shit? No. Another dynamic is around what kind of people feel at home in the group. Consensus provides a radically alternative way to make decisions compared to direct voting, representative democracy, or straightforward hierarchy. People who choose to join consensus groups are often alternative in other ways too. They may be anarchists, feminists, and environmentalists. They might work in co-ops or devote their spare time to campaigning against something they see as unfair. They often go through life feeling like they are in some way different from mainstream society. Yeah, because they listen to the Arboreal Centipede troupe. The true outcasts are people who listen to obscure bands. It is common for those people to forget that in the alternative groups in which they get the rare pleasure of feeling normal, there is usually someone else who is feeling like a misfit and an outsider. They may feel isolated partly because of a lack of self-confidence rather than because the people who are on the inside of a group actively exclude them. For example, if Fred generally isn't very comfortable in himself, he may dislike being in a group where everyone dresses differently to him, even if he is welcomed with open minds and arms. However, it is common for people who feel at home in a group to do and say things which contribute to others feeling marginalized. For example, maybe the group are slower to trust Fred with secret details about planned actions than someone else who looked more similar to them. Dude, why are you wearing a suit? I'm the bad person in this scenario, I guess. I'm not supposed to be mean about it. I'm supposed to... Oh my god. Social privileges. It is not just alternative people who get to feel alternative people.
Yeah, but we have alternative people.
God. It is not just alternative people who get to feel at home in consensus groups. In fact, the internal power dynamics of consensus groups are often much closer to those of wider society than people like to admit. Sometimes this is explicit, like people making sexist jokes or assuming a disabled person is helpless and needs everything doing for them. It's supposed to say done. Done for them. Brits, what the fuck? What the fuck? Alright, anyone want to make some sexist jokes? I'm kidding.
Yeah. Men belong in the kitchen. Wait.
Legit though, like, my dad is the one who cooks. I mean, I cook my own food, but like, he was the cook. Like, that's him. Like, anyway. Alright, let's see here. Okay, sometimes it is harder to spot the connections between your group dynamics and wider social ones. For example, it may always be the same people taking on organizational roles. You might assume that this is because they have more time to be involved, but it is worth questioning whether they all come from a similar background. For example, middle-class people are often brought up with the expectation that they will do professional jobs and are more likely to be confident about their abilities in a managerial role. Sometimes social privilege is more about what is not said or done. For example, does your group take a month's break each year while everyone goes to see family for Christmas, and this is the only festival which is ever mentioned? It's September, y'all. Anyway. Do people make sweeping statements about men and women? Like I just did. Saying that a man's place is in the kitchen. Everyone's place is in the kitchen. That's not true. That's not true. Some people should not be in the kitchen. They need to just give up. The people who are not in charge of the cooking should not be in the kitchen. That's the actual answer. Get them the fuck out. Do not let people in the kitchen when you're cooking if they're not also cooking. And they, like, just do not, because you have no idea what kind of bullshit they're gonna try and pull. Don't do it. Anyway. Do people make sweeping statements about men and women and seem to forget that there are people who don't want to or can't fit in either category? Do your meetings happen up at the top of a 5-story building with no lift, and no one thinks about people who can't climb stairs because they're never there to point out their exclusion? Do posters for the group's events get put up in the Whole Foods shop, the art house cinema, and the university, but not the laundrettes, the chippy, and the bingo hall? The chippy. The laundrettes. The bingo hall. The chippy. The Whole Foods shop. Bretts, are you serious? The assumptions about who we are behind these examples can have an impact that is greater than the sum of their parts. If your life experiences or culture are never acknowledged, then it is likely to undermine your sense of belonging to the group and your ability to find the trust and openness needed for consensus. And of course, if you are never able to be there at all because the publicity is never aimed at you, or because the group chooses an inaccessible venue, then you will be even further from being at home in a group. Recognizing the role of privilege and oppression in how people behave is not so simple as assuming that dominant people are privileged and quieter ones are oppressed. For example, some people might respond to their own oppression with a strong need for achievement to prove themselves. This may come out as a desire to plan everything thoroughly and do everything well. If other people have the same desire, there may be resulting tussles over what well means, but the power dynamics can still be fairly equal. Well is 160 degrees Fahrenheit internal temperature. That's just pointing that out. It's the only proper answer to what well means. Okay. That doesn't mean that you should cook your steaks well. Instead of cooking them well, you should cook them amazingly, which is medium rare. I don't even eat meat, but I have strong opinions on this. I also think that if you cook an omelet and it's like dry and rubbery and shit, that you fucked up. You majorly overcooked it. It's supposed to be soft in the middle. God. It should be soft. You fucked up. I have food opinions, okay? God. Oh boy. Let's see here. Okay. On the other hand, people with a more relaxed attitude may experience this behavior as controlling. Well done, yeah. 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 Exactly. God. On the other hand, people with a more relaxed attitude may experience this behavior as controlling, or there may be some anger in the group whose frustrations are often expressed as anger. If other group members find this intimidating, then the angry people may always get their way. On the other hand, they may find their views are disregarded because their anger is not seen as socially acceptable. In other words, oppression shows itself in complicated ways, and the assumptions we make about how other people have had it easy are often inaccurate. Like, yeah, I don't know, that's just like It is like legitimately disrespectful, honestly. Personally, I think it actually is like not even a joke. Like, don't waste food. Especially not food that you had to murder. Okay? God. Step 4. Working out some ways to change your power dynamics. We have assembled a few tips and thoughts below about things you can do to balance out the power dynamics in your group. It is by no means a comprehensive list. Hopefully these ideas will spark off more of your own. Try them out, refine them, and share them. Equalizing power dynamics is work in progress for all of us. Some of these ideas are concrete suggestions. For example, a series of questions to ask about a venue, to consider different aspects of accessibility. Others are more about the approach that you take and can be applied in a number of situations, like encouraging your group to take shared responsibility for tackling power dynamics. Shared responsibility. Because some people react defensively when you point out their role in power imbalances, it can be tempting to try to deal with them on your own. For example, you might realize that you are doing a lot of the talking and decide to hold back. If the gap you leave is filled by other people who are already speaking a lot, you may end up feeling self-righteous and resentful without having changed anything. Fuck. Oh, God. Oh my God. Okay. Being more open might make it easier for the group to share responsibility for the change. For example, you could say, I've noticed we're all doing very different amounts of speaking. Personally, I've decided to try and hold back a bit, but I wonder if anyone else feels it is a problem or would like to suggest anything else we could do differently. Or if it's someone else's position of power you want to challenge,
I've noticed that Sam has the greatest overview of the finances, and I've caught myself asking her what we can afford instead of bringing my questions to a meeting. This doesn't feel like a very fair on Sam or on the rest of you.
A very fair? What? Huh? Brits, grammar. It's your own language, come on. Because she's going to end up making decisions about what's worth spending money on. Can we have a finances skill share? Stop it, stop it, stop it. This stream is not sponsored by Skillshare. So we're not giving all that power and responsibility to Sam. They're just using the word. It's not the name of the company, okay? Skillshare the company. Fuck you, Skillshare the company. Oh boy. Offering each other support makes a massive difference when challenging power dynamics. It is a common scenario for strong characters to keep each other in check while everyone else keeps their head down and avoids getting mixed up in the conflict. For example, perhaps someone is insisting on their favorite plan, even though it clearly won't work for other people. If another person challenges them, it is easy to keep yourself quiet, or keep quiet yourself. However, this puts pressure on people who are already dominant to stay in that role in order to balance out other dominant people. There is a much better chance of really changing the situation if a range of people in the group take responsibility for challenging abuses of power. The conflict section above has ideas on how to raise these issues. Take it a step at a time. Take it a step at a time. Another general principle is that deeply ingrained power dynamics are unlikely to change overnight, and achieving change may take patience. Sudden breakthroughs may be followed by unexpected setbacks, but this isn't a reason to give up. It's easy to have a moment of self-realization. I keep my mouth shut till I've heard what Rakesh has to say, and then I go along with that. Do you think I pronounced this accurately? And then find out that you were doing exactly the same the next meeting. The only difference being that you notice afterwards and get cross with yourself. Follow up your moments of insight with small, achievable changes in behavior. Next time I catch myself doing it, I'll stop and think hard about whether I really believe it or in what I've just said, and if I don't, I'll say I've changed my mind. Similarly, the dynamics of the whole group aren't going to shift instantly just because you have named them. Try to recognize steps forward for what they are, and to keep pushing for more. Finally, is your group accessible to as many people as possible? Question mark. The first and most basic step to challenging power dynamics in a group is to make sure that everyone who wants to be part of it can come to your meetings and events. Notice it says, can come to your meetings and events. Physically, can they even get to them? Thank you. This doesn't mean that an anti-fascist group needs to welcome members of a racist political party, nor does it mean that it is always wrong to get together with a few friends and get on with doing something without including anyone else. However, if you do want an open group, then make sure you don't exclude people who would otherwise agree with your aims. It's up to people already in a group to be proactive about this, because the people who are left out may never provide feedback. We've already provided the example of the group that meets up 5 flights of stairs. Someone who can't get there at all may not put lots of effort into pointing out how exclusive this is. It's up to people in the group to work it out. Similarly, if you do all your publicity on social media sites, then someone who uses email or the postal service is unlikely to ask you to do it in any other way, because they won't know you exist. The following tips will make it easier for people to find out about and get to your meetings. Publicity. The first question is, who knows that the event is happening? Think about where your publicity goes. Try talking to people who are involved in groups with very different memberships about what they find the most effective ways of publicizing an event. This might be as simple as finding out where there are notice boards in parts of town you don't usually go to. Alternatively, it may involve things like getting your leaflets translated or printing some in larger text. The second question is about who can get there. There isn't always a perfect venue, although there are tips below on finding the best you can. Gather accurate information about the venue and the event and list all access features clearly in your publicity. For example, 2 parking spaces for blue badge holders, level entrance to the building from the car park, stepped entrance with a handrail on the left, hearing induction loop in the meeting room, vegetarian, vegan, halal, and kosher food available. Baby changing facilities and creche available. Creche. Brits, stop calling it that. If I ever register on a new app, yeah, exactly. Fuck that. Oh my god. Giving this level of detail will not only help someone decide whether to come, it also helps them trust that access has been thought about in advance, so they are more likely to get in touch with questions or feedback. By the way, with the food, if you just like, oh yeah, we've got vegetarian, vegan, halal, and kosher food available, and it's a bag of chips or some shit. It's a salad with nothing other than just like, you know, it's just a salad. It's sad. It's just like everyone else is eating like actual meal and you're having a salad because that's all they had that was vegetarian or vegan or whatever, right? Like, don't do this to people. Oh yeah, I've got some celery sticks here. Like, seriously. Oh my god. Choosing a venue to hire. Sometimes the only venue you can afford is someone's front room, and even when you're paying, the choices can be limited. The following list of the questions will help you pick and make the best of what is available. Ask and listen to feedback about how accessible your event is so that you can extend this list for next time. Oh, pardon me. To find out about venues with disabled access, you could contact your local disability rights organization. Look in the yellow pages or phone book under... Kids these days have no idea what that means. Do they still use phone books in Britain? Don't tell me they still use phone books in Britain. Yo, what the fuck? Oh my god. Anyway, I didn't know they still had phone books in Britain. What the fuck, y'all? What the fuck? Truly, like, oh my god, England is such a cursed country, y'all. It's such a cursed country. What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? Anyway, or ask your local council or Citizens Advice Bureau for contact information. Visit the venue before booking it to check accessibility. Here are some things to check. What are the public transport links? Are any of these accessible, and if so, in what ways? Is there a car park or any area near the front door for cars? If so, are there marked blue badge spaces? If not, consider reserving the parking spaces for badge holders. Is the accessible entrance kept locked? If so, this is sending a clear message to wheelchair users and people with mobility impairments that they are not wanted. Insist that the locked entrance is kept unlocked for the duration of your time in the building. Make sure that the path up to the accessible entrance is not blocked by wheelie bins, rubbish bags, advertising boards, etc. Wheelie bins. Wheelie bins? I've got a wheelie bin out front. I don't... like... Brits. Really? Wheelie bins. Hippity hoppity, flippity floppity, garbage fucking compactor. Like what? A pip pip gollywog. Oh my god. Is the adapted toilet kept locked? If so, make sure that it is unlocked while you are in the building. Non-disabled adults do not have to ask for permission to use the toilet, so why should disabled people? Yeah. Is the adapted toilet clean and free of clutter? Question mark. Is there a loop system in your meeting room for hearing aid users? If so, is it working? Does anyone know how to switch it on or alter the volume? If so, will that person be there when you hold your event in the building? Are there clear signposts from the entrance to the room? Are there any visual flashing fire alarms in the toilets to alert deaf and hearing impaired people of fire? If not, consider what you will need to do in an emergency. Is the baby changing area accessible to disabled people? Is the venue child-friendly? Are there obvious hazards such as unlocked doors that open onto busy roads or stairs with no stair gates? Does the venue have a private room that can be used as prayer spaces? Remember, some faiths require followers to pray at regular intervals. Does your event timetable allow for this? Finally, if anyone complains about access to your venue, listen carefully and make a note of the difficulties so that you can either sort out the problem or add the information to future publicity. Creating a group where more people feel at home. Making sure that people can get to your meetings is just the starting point. Creating a culture in which a diverse range of people feels relaxed and able to take ownership and initiative requires time and work. Unfortunately, there is no simple checklist to follow here, although there are a few things you can do at events that avoid excluding people in really obvious ways. For example, you can adapt handouts for visually impaired people, book sign language interpreters and translators, and make sure any food you provide caters for all diets. To deal with more subtle forms of exclusion, there is a strong case for building up your self-awareness, pausing to reflect on how the little things you say and do give messages about who we are. This applies to everyone. Even if you feel on the outside of the group or mainstream society a lot of the time, there will be some ways in which you leave other people out. However, it is particularly important if you are someone who takes up a lot of space, quote. The more you do and say, the greater your influence on group culture. You could try giving yourself a few moments for reflection shortly after a meeting to replay things that were said and done and how they might look through someone else's eyes. Imagining another person's perspective, especially the things they never mention, is never going to give you as accurate information as if they just fucking told you about it themselves. Can't read your fucking mind, just fucking say it. Progress is more likely to happen when people start pointing out when they are sidelined or exploited and bringing perspectives forward that aren't usually heard in the group. Before this happens organically, a lot of people may have left, and others may be exploding with suppressed anger. Whatever position you have in a group, there are a number of things you could try to speed the process. For example, to speed the process. Hey, I have a question. English teachers. Does this really work? To speed the process. I sped the process. Period. To speed as a verb usually means to drive too fast. You don't speed something, you just speed in general. You break the speed limit. You don't speed a thing. That's not a thing that you can do to things. It's not the type of verb. Do I have to be as annoying as possible about spelling and grammar and editing in everything I read? No, only when it's written by British people. It's their fucking language. They should have figured it out. People are going to be so mad at me if I put this on YouTube. There are going to be a bunch of Brits that are like not happy with this. If I leave the comments up, I got to prepare myself for people getting annoyed. Just to be clear, I'm not actually legitimately completely 100% serious about all of the grammar and shit, but like, you should try to edit your shit properly, thank you. Okay? I know mistakes happen, but like, guess what's more accessible? A document that has a bunch of spelling mistakes and weird grammar in it, or a document that is well edited and doesn't have those problems? I don't know. Anyway, for example, you might have an individual chat with someone about the behavior you observe and how you feel about it. See the conflict section above. Alternatively, you might point it out straight away when someone makes assumptions you find even a tiny bit exclusive. Some of us have to go to work or drop kids at school. We can't all stay up till late tonight and pay it off with a lie-in in the morning. If the group makes it easy for people to give each other feedback and say how they feel, then people are much more likely to voice any concerns early on. The ideas in the above conflict section about creating a supportive culture can help here. For example, you might have a regular slot in your meetings for everyone to say how they feel about the group dynamics. It is important that when someone challenges something, they are respected by the group. Even if you think they are overreacting, listen carefully and encourage them to explain why they see it in the way they do. There can be a danger that people who are often in a position of power in a group can want their group to be more diverse simply because they know that this is good. For example, there might be a group opposing cuts to public services where everyone is able-bodied. If disability benefits is a major issue the group is campaigning on, members might have strong desire to involve some of the people who currently receive those benefits. If this desire leads them to think carefully about the choice of venues and how publicity is made and displayed to ensure maximum accessibility, there are a few people who would object. However, if you are a wheelchair user and people are trying to persuade you to join their group, or even if you receive an exaggerated welcome in the first meeting you turn up to, then you may believe that your visible disability has led them to pick you as a mascot, and feel even less like you can be at home in the group. Each person has the right to decide for themselves whether a group will meet their needs, and the group should respect that. Speaking of a mascot, when I was in college, my first or second year, I can't remember, one of the people in my dorm had a service dog, and it was like an adorable giant golden retriever or whatever. And we voted the service dog in as the dorm's mascot. The dog was cute, okay. But it's a service dog. Don't just go up and pet it when he's wearing his dealio, okay? Don't do that. Oh, God. Oh, boy. Oh, my fuck. Sharing out tasks and skills. We identified above that an unequal distribution of tasks was a barrier to people getting involved as equals in decision making. This can be the case when some people do a lot more work than others, and also when the tasks that some people do are accorded more status than others. There are a number of possible responses to this situation. For example, leaving the distribution of tasks as it is, but trying to change the status that is given to them. For example, by thanking the person who took the 3 minutes at a meeting in the same way as the facilitator, or pulling people up when they say things like, well, I sort of went to the action camp, but I just did the washing up. Be aware in this case that ideas about status can be deeply ingrained, and someone might feel more patronized than encouraged. Swapping roles on a regular basis, for example using a rota system or setting a rule that someone can only do a particular job once a month. Run skill shares, not the company. Buddy up on tasks and share key information so that people are supported to take on new roles. When sharing skills informally like this, it would be unusual to plan exactly how to go about it in the way we might if we were running a workshop, but it can help to put some thought into what will help people actually learn. See the short guide on facilitating workshops in the appendix for some tips. Oh boy. Aim for a balance of the type of tasks each person takes on. For example, someone who does a lot of facilitation at a gathering could do less and take on cleaning toilets as well. God. I'm so tired, y'all. God, A consideration when shifting roles around is whether people have more or less enough skills to simply take something on. Sorry, or whether they need support to learn. In the protest site example we used earlier, it is probably not the end of the world if the food is less good and the log pile grows more slowly for a little while. On the other hand, if everyone gets food poisoning and someone chops off their foot with an axe, it could be a little more problematic. Don't give an axe to someone who doesn't know how to use it. God. Oh my gosh. Oh boy. However much skill sharing you do, the aim is not necessarily to get to a place where everyone spends exactly the same amount of time on each task. It would be a waste if someone was never able to use their talent and passion in a group because they were always making space for other people or desperately struggling with other tasks that they were never going to enjoy. We can assume that with enough support to pick up the skills, most people will be able to go and do an acceptable job at most things. However, you are unlikely to get to the point where everyone is equally able to do any task, and if you did, you might never do anything else. A simple yardstick to aim for is in an established group that there is no task that only one person knows how to do, and everyone does some tasks that are considered skilled. Remember that the aim is to take some steps towards evening out your power dynamics while still achieving whatever it was that your group was set up for, and the distribution of tasks is only one factor in that. Changing social relationships. Tackling power dynamics can involve changing people's beliefs about themselves and each other. A beautiful presentation of the accounts won't help if people are sat there thinking, what's this got to do with me? Or Deidre will decide what we can afford, so why should I get my head around it? Why should I get my head around it? I don't know how to say. Deep-rooted beliefs may take more time and work to change than this chapter is able to offer tips on, but shifting the ways you relate to each other can help. In meetings, simple things like having a slot for people to talk about feelings or things that are going on in their lives can help some people. It can also be very challenging for others, so you might want to limit the time you devote to it and make it optional. Another simple strategy is to spend social time together doing something the group doesn't usually do. Meetings are a very specific way of interacting that work better for some people and for some sides of people's personalities than for others. If we also socialize together, we can develop greater trust and understanding through knowing each other in different ways. This isn't always straightforward. Before I do that, what does the 88 in your name mean? Just wondering. I'll do it on the next paragraph, by the way. Go ahead, share with the class. Were you born in 1988? Please tell me that's the actual answer. Please tell me that's the answer. Who? Where? Oh, sorry. Someone just redeemed a thing. I'll do it in a second. Someone redeemed a one paragraph of fem voice reading. I'll do it in a second. And anyway, boy, this isn't always straightforward. If you go to the pub and talk about the usual group topics, you might find it doesn't help as much as you hoped. People who don't like sitting in a circle and talking in meetings might not find it a lot easier to join. You're just redeeming more of them. You're just redeeming more of them. You know, I can't do it yet until it's the next paragraph, right? That's how I do it. I do it one paragraph at a time. The social time only helps. Okay, anyway, people who don't like sitting in a circle and talking in meetings might not find it a lot easier to join in when the same people are doing the same thing in the pub. The social time only helps if people feel like they can be themselves, and it may make things worse if they don't. For example, if you feel an unease because the group assumption is that everyone is heterosexual and you are not, then it is, if the rest of the group relaxes in the pub and starts gossiping about who fancies who, it might help you bring some things out into the open, or you might keep your mouth shut and feel even more estranged. Not to mention that basing your social time on alcohol isn't great for non-drinkers. Yeah, fuck off. Like, don't do that shit. Or people who can't afford it. It is best, therefore, if going to the pub after a meeting is not the default or only option, but one of an array of different contexts in which your relationships are built. All right, 2 paragraphs. Sorry. I had to gross you out first.
Games let out tensions in different ways, or doing practical activities together like cooking or walking. If these activities involve an expert to show everyone else what to do, then the ideal is for that to be one of the people who is less established in the group. Sometimes it can be easier for people to learn openness and trust through building one-on-one relationships within a group. Be aware of anyone who has not been included in these activities. An individual's isolation could be increased as informal small group bonding happens between others.
Talking about issues directly.
If there is an imbalance in your group, it can help to name it and talk about it directly. For example, maybe some people are putting a lot more time into the group than others. A group where no one is paid is unlikely to have a way for them to get formal recognition for this. The possibility for guilt and resentment in this situation might be diffused by an explicit conversation about how people feel about it. This might lead into a discussion about how to share tasks more effectively, either immediately or over the longer term as people's available time fluctuates. On the other hand, it may be that people simply have to accept the imbalance, but are able to do so more easily for having acknowledged it openly.
Those are 2 paragraphs. Whether the power dynamic you see is to do with something specific in your group, or to your group, like some individuals working harder than others, or whether it is part of a wider social pattern, like people with mental health problems being stigmatized, naming the issue can bring up strong feelings. Mentioning things little and often can help. Little and often? What does that mean? Huh? Which one is it? Do you mean early and often? Hello, editor. What does that mean? However, if someone or something has built up to a point where some people feel anxiety about discussing it, then asking for an outside facilitator could be a good idea. If this option isn't available and you ask someone in the group to facilitate, then make sure that everyone trusts them and that they have time to prepare. What about when people leave? You may find that people who don't feel valued in a group don't stick around long enough to let everyone else know how they feel. If you are in the core of a group and notice people leaving, the first thing to remember is that they have every right to do this. You might want more people for your campaign, or it might help you feel good about your group if it manages to be more inclusive, but this isn't their responsibility. Oh, fuck. Editors are hierarchies, not disabilities. Oh my god. However, if you want honest feedback, you could approach the person who is left on an individual basis. Make it clear you're not trying to win them back, but let them know you would welcome them if they did. Okay, anarchists, I need to tell you something. If you give something that you wrote to the editor of the pamphlet or whatever that you're making, to be put in the pamphlet, it is not a fucking hierarchy or oppression for them to correct your fucking spelling. If you need things to be spelled differently for a stylistic purpose, you need to make sure the editor knows that. Got it? Anyway. Brit anarchists most specifically. God. Okay. Okay, where were we? Okay, you might want more people for your campaign, or it might help you feel good about your group if it manages to be more inclusive, but this isn't their responsibility. However, if you want honest feedback, you could approach the person who is left on an individual basis. Make it clear you're not trying to win them back, but let them know you would welcome them if they did. Check what bits of feedback they are happy for you to pass on to the rest of the group, and which they would prefer you didn't. You could ask them how easy it was to speak in meetings and to take on tasks. Remember, it's not all about you. They may simply have left because it wasn't the right group for them, or they realized they didn't have the time or energy. Don't push them beyond what they are comfortable saying. Their feedback is a favor to you, and not something they have to do. Prepare yourself not to be defensive if what you hear reflects badly on you or your group, and thank them for helping you out. Other common issues. External pressures. Consensus works at its best when we can be creative and work together to find new solutions that really work for everyone. However, even if our group dynamics are great, our options can still be limited by external pressures. The political and financial system we live in places a lot of constraints on us that we can't always ignore. If you are a housing co-op looking for somewhere to live, for example, the limited range of buildings you can afford might make it much harder to find something which suits everyone. Even if it was theoretically possible to find a synthesis of different people's ideas by extending and adapting one of the less than ideal buildings, you would still be constrained by planning law, not to mention the limited time left to work on the house once everyone had gone out to work to keep paying off the mortgage and the bills. If you are in a situation where you are choosing between two bad options, the best thing you can do is be honest about it. Don't tear your group apart battling over which is least terrible. Accept that the problem comes from outside yourselves and see what you can do to work towards a situation where you have some real control in the future. For example, maybe you are a vegetable growing group that has sat on the waiting list for an allotment for several years and has finally been offered the choice of waiting even longer or taking a small shady space full of rubble and litter. In the short term, you might accept you have to make the best one of one of these two options, even if neither are great. However, it helps to recognize that your options would not be so limited in the first place if land was more fairly distributed, and this is the issue which needs to be addressed in the longer term. You might not be able to achieve this on your own, but you could do things in whatever way suited your group to work towards it. This could involve pressurizing your local council. Pressurizing. Just pressuring, please, thank you. Do not pressurize your local council. That would kill them. Don't do that. Pressure your local council to provide more allotment spaces or finding some unused ground that belonged to someone else and planting out your seedlings there. Chapter 9, Consensus in a Wider Society, presents some ideas about how society might be differently structured to give us even more real control over the decisions that affect our lives. This wouldn't remove external pressures altogether. Our options will always be constrained by what resources are available. When there simply isn't enough to go around, any means of making decisions will have its limitations. However, this shouldn't be taken as an excuse to close down the options too quickly. There's usually a fairer way of sharing out what we have. 500 PSI to your local council, yeah. Or a creative way of getting more, or the possibility of reassessing what we really need so that one of the bad options can be made to work, and consensus can help us find our way through all this. Open groups with changing membership. In a group where there is clear membership and each person has defined responsibilities, like a co-op or a closed affinity group, then problems can be easier to identify, and there may be more widespread commitment to addressing them. By contrast, in groups where that have open membership, people often simply disappear if there is an unaddressed conflict, or if they feel there is an inner circle they are excluded from. In other cases, someone with limited commitment to a group may push their own views with less concern about what is right for everyone else. The sections above on power dynamics and creating a supportive culture for a collaborative approach to conflict provide some ideas about how to create a welcoming group that people don't feel the need to melt away from. This section focuses more on ways the core aims and values of the group can be protected. What's the problem? ? Someone might have their own agenda when they join a group. For example, getting involved in a network with a general focus on ecology, hoping to get people on board with a more specific campaign, say against nuclear power. They may have very valid reasons to hold the views that they do, but if these views aren't balanced with the real care for what other people want, as well as respect for the core aims of the group, then reaching true consensus may become difficult. Or it may simply be that another person has a different understanding of what the group is about. For example, supposing you are an anarchist group that doesn't want to put people off by being too explicit, and simply publicizes itself as being into empowerment. This is open to all kinds of interpretation, and may mean that a more diverse range of people come along, but there may not be enough common ground in what they want to do for the group to be useful to anyone. Or perhaps you set up a campaign group that was committed to preventing a new shopping center from being built in your town. Someone else joins who is quite positive about the shopping center, but wants to make sure it is built in a way that doesn't destroy any of the old buildings on the existing site. You might be able to work with this person on specific issues, but if they joined your group and had a significant influence on the direction it took, you might find that soon there was no group left that was actually opposed to the shopping center. Therefore, as well as supporting new people to become included, you may want to find ways to protect the group's core aims and activities so that it is prevented from doing and being what it was set up for. Protecting the group. As always, there is a question of striking the right balance between protecting the group and its aims, yet being open to new ideas and people. There is limited benefit to a group that is so dominated by what the founding members wanted that it can't adapt to changes in circumstances, or new people can never have an influence on what it does. However, there are a few simple strategies that can make sure everyone has a grasp of what the original vision was, and changes come about through conscious decisions rather than drifting along or misunderstandings. Learning from closed groups. More formal groups often have systems in place to keep the group true to its original intentions. It is common for a co-op to have a structured joining process for people who are new to work out if the group is right for them and vice versa. During this period, there may be limitations on the influence the newcomer can have on the group and its direction. For example, probationary members might only be able to contribute to short-term decisions, which will definitely affect them, but not to a longer-term strategy. Or they might be allowed to give their opinion, but not to block a decision from going on ahead until their probationary period was over. A more open group, the membership of which is made up of people who happened to turn up at any particular meeting, would find it hard to put structures like this in place. It would be possible to have rules saying something like people had to attend at least 2 meetings before they could have certain rights in the group, like using the block or joining the email list. However, this might be more off-putting than it was useful. Other possibilities are setting rules which limit the use of the block for everybody, saying that it can only be used to protect the core aims of the group and not for individual reasons, for example. Why does my gum hurt? What did I do? God. The fuck is this bullshit? Clear communication with newcomers. Any group can use some simple ways of protecting itself and its activities. The suggestions below are less about introducing rules and procedures, and more about how you communicate about the group and what it stands for. Be clear what the core goals and shared principles of the group are. Explain these in any publicity and tell new people when they come along with anything else they need to know about how the group works. I was supposed to say when they come, along with anything else, okay? Don't overdo it. Lots of people don't like being bombarded with information when they first arrive somewhere. On the other hand, it is not particularly empowering to be left trying to work out what is going on, or only to only find out what the group's views are when you say something different and an awkward silence falls. Pardon me. Pace the information you give and balance it with an interest in the new people and who they are. If someone suggests something which goes against the group's beliefs and aims, it is usually better to say so openly than go silent and leave them guessing what they've done wrong. It is particularly important to make sure everyone understands how you make decisions. Don't just explain the process, or worse, just the hand signals that you use when making a consensus decision. Be clear about the principles behind it. You might need to give this explanation at the beginning of the meeting and repeat it at the decision-making stage. Be especially careful that everyone understands how your group uses blocks, stand-asides, etc. This is worth doing even if someone has used consensus before. It is less likely to seem patronizing if you frame it in terms of different groups having different ways of making consensus decisions and show a genuine interest in any variations that they have met. Record the decisions you make and refer back to them whenever a related item comes up so that you aren't unnecessarily revisiting past decisions. For example, imagine a group has already had a long discussion about how to present their campaign in a way that made clear links with other issues. You might not be exactly the same set of people next time you come to make a leaflet or prepare a media interview, and you may well make different decisions, but it can be helpful to all look at what was decided last time and why, so you may make use of the work and thought that has already gone into it. Think carefully about which decisions are open to review when someone new comes along. For example, an anti-militarist group that did direct action at army bases and weapons manufacturers might have some standard security procedures to make sure they got to do their actions before anyone can stop them. They might simply explain these to new people and expect them to either agree or leave, or they might decide it was worth starting from scratch when someone new joined, so that everyone was fully on board with what was agreed.
Oh.
How long is this next section? Okay. What if you're the only person who wants the group to change? A lot of the advice in this book is written for the benefit of a whole group, but what if you were in a group where other people don't know about or aren't interested in consensus? Another common situation is for a group to say that they use consensus but without wanting to make any real changes in order to properly involve everyone in decision-making. If you are just one person or a small minority that has a different view, then your opinions for making the changes you would like to see are more limited. Sorry, your options for making the changes, God. Questions to ask yourself. Is consensus right for the group, or is it just something that you would like to see happen? If the group has made a conscious decision to use a different method of decision-making, you could explain why you didn't agree, but you probably couldn't change what they did. In a group where people hadn't really thought about how to make decisions, it might be easier to persuade them, but this might be an abuse of your power, or at least a waste of your time. Refer back to the conditions for consensus, and think about whether you can imagine them ever being met. For example, maybe the group has been set up with a particular purpose, like setting up a community orchard or opposing a new road, and for most people the objective will always be much more important than the internal group dynamics. Therefore, even if people agree to use consensus, or say they already do, it may never get a high enough priority for them to change how they hold their meetings. Alternatively, perhaps you have a formal role in the group which gives you the right to introduce something new, like being the president of the student union, a teacher overseeing a school council, or a volunteer who runs a youth group. In this case, the question is whether the people you are introducing it to have the power to make meaningful decisions themselves. If you or someone else has the final word, then it is best to be honest about this and only use consensus when everyone really does get involved as an equal, and the group does have the power to make decisions. What are you going to do about it? ? Thinking about these questions on your own might be enough for you to decide the group will never work by consensus. If consensus is a big priority for you, you might decide you want to leave, or you might, is that supposed to say to leave, or leave like a temporary leave? Oh my god. Or you might stick around because the other things the group does are important to you. Okay. If you stick around, you could still make some suggestions about more democratic ways of working. For example, a group could continue to use voting, but pay greater attention to including everyone in the discussion. Alternatively, it might be that there are a number of people who seem interested in using consensus, as well as others who are more skeptical or just not interested. In this case, you might decide to look at where the group is at currently, and make a few suggestions about how to improve the dynamics. Alternatively, you might present your entire vision for how group decision-making could work and why. This might inspire some people to be totally dismissed by others. Use your judgment as to what would work best in your own group. Sharing your thoughts. If the issue seems to be that people follow the rhetoric of consensus but are actually too attached to their own power to really apply it, then look back at the sections on power, privilege, and conflict for thoughts on how to deal with the issue. On the other hand, if the issue is that people lack knowledge and experience of consensus, you can find ways to share yours. Make sure that anything you say is in the spirit of offering suggestions and observations, but not trying to convince them that you are right. If they don't share your values, you can't force them to. You can just explain what you think. Try to explain, there should be a comma after values there. If they don't share your values, comma, you can't force them to. You can just explain what you think. You might want to put an M dash after 2 there. I'm just try to explain the principles of consensus in a way that enables people to think about what they believe without being too loaded. If you say, for example, voting allows minorities to be steamrollered into silence. Anyone who truly respects other people uses consensus. Then people who have used voting all their life may not feel that this is a fair representation of their own behavior. It is, though, just to be clear. It might be more effective to say something more neutral, like, when a group votes, anyone in a minority position is overruled, whereas consensus looks for options everyone can live with. Observations on how meetings are happening may help people see different ways of doing things. To begin with, it can help to express this in a way that doesn't comment directly on individuals. For example, I notice that people are speaking different amounts. It's easier to swallow than Juan dominates the group. This doesn't mean you should brush it under the carpet if Juan continues to do all the talking. Look at the conflict section above for ideas on how to bring it up. Link your observations to alternative suggestions. For example, Maureen said she thought the community center was the best venue, and a few people nodded, and now we seem to be assuming it has been agreed. I think it might be helpful to check whether everyone really is happy with this venue. That way we know we actually did have consensus, and we can write it down knowing that it was a clear decision. Limit the number of suggestions and observations that you make in order to not create an unhealthy dynamic. If some individuals in the group are interested, you might want to talk to them more about your ideas, but avoid creating a faction of people who back each other up on things they've already talked about outside the meeting. For example, if you have a private discussion with someone about the group dynamics and you encourage them to bring it to a meeting, be honest with yourself about whether your intention is to empower them or to get someone else to voice your ideas. If they had said something you don't agree with, would you be equally encouraging? ? A better strategy might be to get something or someone in from the outside. For example, you might think there are lots of things the group could do to improve their facilitation skills, but worry that they might not listen to these ideas coming from you. Getting someone from another group to run a workshop might help people to be open to new ideas, which they can think about for themselves. A conclusion to Chapter 8, not the whole book, just to Chapter 8. Many groups choose consensus. It's only a conclusion. There's more conclusions, maybe. It's just one of them. One of the many potential conclusions. This is just one of them. Okay. Many groups choose consensus because they want to work together as equals, using the full creative power of everyone involved. Some groups call their decision-making process consensus simply because they don't vote. However, in order to achieve the meaningful consent of everyone in a group, all of those people need to be interacting as equals and taking shared responsibility for how the decision gets made, as well as what the outcome is, even when their interests appear to be in conflict. It is easy to feel disillusioned or even to betrayed if you feel that your group is not even attempting to do this work. Most of us experience frustration when progress is slow or uneven. However, it is also possible to look at the situation the other way around. It is when we succeed in a difficult situation that consensus can have a transformative power. When there is real commitment to doing consensus, we experience respect and understanding, not just from the people who are close to us and on our side, but from a wider group that may not agree with us or even like us. Trust and openness were listed in the first chapter as conditions for consensus. However, the reverse can also be true. By experiencing good consensus processes, we can learn to be trusting and open. We can learn whatever our life experience of trying to prove ourselves, of trying to win people over, of suppressing our own needs in order to fit in, that there are many other possibilities out there. It is possible to honestly express what we want and to have it taken on board by people who want something different. It is possible to experience powerful anger and still listen to the perspectives of the person who triggered that anger. It is possible to let go of the control we had over the group or over a group and share that control with the group instead. Experiencing these things opens the door to another way of living and to different kinds of community. There's no time like the present to start learning how. Oh boy, okay.